tremendous people. So I think they'll add a little different spin to this. I'm going to run through the slides. I updated them a little bit, but basically it's the same ones that we've been doing recently. And I thought to hear it from a board member's perspective and also from one of our new partner agencies. So we're pretty excited about Simone's involvement. So I'm just going to run through these quickly, but feel free to ask me any questions. Okay, if I can get, excuse me a second. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to touch on the profile discussions, about setting up your firm. It's really critical as we bring in new agencies and as you do more public work, that your firm disclosure. So we still get questions on evaluations and references, but I'm very pleased we're getting a lot more of those references in, and we're reaching out to a lot of agencies. So I want to talk about that quickly, about public records, and then Elise and Simone will do a very important part about the applications and what DHCD is doing.
Bill,
so I think you're all from
before you go.
Yeah.
If the screen share could move to the slideshow mode, these images would be larger and easier to see, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Much better.
Nice, very good.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I don't really have to repeat this. I think you all by now are registered and you understand that this was meant to be a statewide database, that the DSB is the parent selection body. We don't do selections for all the agencies, but we set forms and policy. And rather than doing another tired paper form that would have to be updated, the timing was good to really tackle the effort to have a statewide database and have all this information in one place. And very excited that the design community has really stepped up to offer us a lot of great suggestions. And I was kidding Kate earlier that sometimes when people offer me suggestions, they're pleased and surprised to find out they're implemented the next day. So so if you've got some good ideas, and I see some of the great people on the call, I know Laureen has offered suggestions, Arathi has offered suggestions. A lot of them have given us some really good input, and we continue to we have Autocen on a monthly retainer in addition to our licenses. So we're continuing to as far as Vikram, if you're familiar with their tech guy, is rolling out new features every month. So applications by role, and this is what allows us to have DHCD and other agencies that are able to protect their own information while also benefiting from the group information. So, MBTA and MSBA and DHCD and DCAM, a lot of what they do is very similar. Hiring architects, engineers, cost estimators, others. They're looking for evaluations, references, and standardized forms, but then they also might have their own processes. So it's very easy to, within Autocen, for them to protect information that is not for everyone. Similarly, the DSB staff has some roles and some things that we do uniquely. So this is all because we can do everything by role. You probably all set up your firm now. You know that there's a unique file. This replaces the old master file brochure that we had. There's no longer have to do that. I think everyone's probably aware of that. This actually follows the statute better. I don't really know where the idea of a master file brochure came from, but all the statute requires is a disclosure. And so we've taken that, instead of filing that, you just click on it to go to the next screen. We have the most common diversity categories is MBE, WBE, and VVE, but we have a limited ability to put other categories. One trick is that some of the certification organizations are different. So we developed a auto certification link with the Supplier Diversity Office that does MBE and WBE. But I think the VBE, if I remember correctly, comes from federal. So we're still gonna have to do that manually. But for most of the certifications that the agencies we work with right now, it's automatically updated, which replaces your requirement to provide certification letters with the application. So this Autocen report, hopefully you've all set this up. It's one thing, this is the first version of it. This is meant to be a marketing piece on your company. And this is useful when somebody looks you up. If you've chosen to hide your information, if you remember, you have the ability to hide your clients, your experience from your competing firms, perhaps, but not from public agencies. But we still wanted to have something that would show up when somebody searched for you. So this allows you to have basic information about your firm, a little bit narrative. One thing that's missing that we're adding is really needed is this section right here was left for being able to say what services you offer. So right now we can filter by diversity characteristics, what type of designer you are, but we don't have all the subcategories like civil engineer, structural engineer, architect, landscape architect, cost estimator. But that's coming. We want to use the SF 330 list, federal list, because that seems to be the closest to a standard. We're getting a lot of every agency's used different titles, so we're trying to have some standards. Evaluations references. I've mentioned this before. There's a memo under the Q&A tab that kind of discusses the differences between evaluations. Evaluations are for primes. They're statutorily required from every public agency. We've never had a good place to put them. We now have a place to put them. We've gone through all of our files for all the paper ones we have, and we've reached out to all the cities and towns that keep sending the old forms to us, and we've said, hey, let's use the new system. So part of that, I'm doing a presentation on April 1st, no joke, that to mass facilities to try to get the municipalities up to speed on the system. References are for primes and subs. Anybody, there's a voluntary system meant to fill in the gaps for sub firms. There's no requirement for evaluations to be done. So this is an idea to help you build your public profile. We don't expect a lot of problems with this, but if there's a reference for some reason that you have a problem with, this is a voluntary system. We can just take it down if there happens to be a problem. We've made it really easy for you to get these into the system. You don't even have to be a user. So and again, information on that is on under the Q&A tab under Autocen. We're pretty excited about this. I mentioned earlier, Vikram is on a retainer, or Autocen that has money to keep Vikram working, making improvements. So we realize that we'll never be able to get every one of these cities and towns and agencies to chase after them. So it really has to come from you. So we've drafted up a tool which is in beta now, so that every firm will be able to put in all the projects that you are expecting evaluation. And it could be hundreds. One firm contacted me, and they believe they'd do 200 evaluations. I can't possibly. We don't even know about the projects because most of them went through the DSB. So there's a tool where they'll put in the information of the project in a spreadsheet, and that'll be uploaded into a workflow under their firm. And then all of those pending evaluators will be notified and say, hey, you owe us this, or we'll say it very nicely. And then DSB staff will get a copy of it. and then if necessary, we can follow up. But the idea, I think once people are notified, we'll get a much higher percentage. And the idea is over a few months, we hopefully will have thousands and thousands of evaluations. The board has taken the position if they're 6 years old, then they're less use. You know, we probably won't delete them from the system, but we're mostly interested in the ones from 2015 on.
Bill, I'm getting some good questions in the chat. Can I throw them at you now? The first is,
go ahead.
Thank you. The first is, can we submit private clients as references?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I would take a look at that. I would take a look at that memo and yeah. So the intent is you can. So if we're missing a field, I tell you, we continue to get suggestions for, hey, somebody told me the other day, hey, we don't have a field for this type of facility or this, you know, they're all good comments. So it's something we can make a change very quickly. And if it's, you know, if it's a really significant change, I'll bring it to the board. We do have a subcommittee meeting, and I think April 7th, Elise, which we're going to try to, and that's really the forum for significant changes. But yes, the intent is you can have private.
Excellent. And then there was one other question. It had to do with evaluations. If evaluations aren't showing up, is the reason perhaps that the agencies still have yet to send them in? And are firms encouraged to reach out to agencies and remind them?
Yeah, so that's what this new tool is for. We were doing that. We were doing it passively, and my staff and I would be, well, we'll be happy to train them. And then we realized, hey, this will never get to them all. You know, we'll never. I mean, there's 351 cities and towns and countless state agencies and authorities that are required to provide them. Another thing to think of, if you have a house doctor contract and maybe we picked 5, each one of those could have 20 projects under them that are required to have evaluations. So there should be a lot of evaluations in there. And you know, sometimes when you have the paper form, it's missing dates, or it's you know, it's been a challenge. You know, or we can't read people's handwriting, and they're no longer with the city when we go back to talk to them. So we really need them to do them online. So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Carrie Duran, if it doesn't answer the question, let us know.
Yeah, believe me, I've been in business. I was in business myself a long time. I want to offer great customer service. So if there's something that you think as a partner in this and as a taxpayer that we should be doing, you know, I'd love to hear it. I mean, we'd love to help you. You know, and your suggestions will help everybody. So I will say there's one of that firm I mentioned that has 200 evaluations due. They're actually offered to ask them, and they're going to work with us on a format for the upload. So in other words, what fields are those? Like every one of these, we have to figure out what fields is there. So if anyone else wants to be part of that, I'm happy to you know, include you in that discussion. So, you know, maybe there's firms that own more than 200, and so it's you know, but again, Vikram now has a real case for somebody to be able to upload them. So if you want to, just contact me if you want to be part of that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so it's kind of an innovative thing. One thing that's been cool about Autocen for me, you know, at this point in my career, it's not a financial thing. It's, you know, wanting to make good use of your time and help, and, you know, much like Elise and Simone, there's some really innovative features that have been built into Autocen that have gotten a lot of interest both within the state and nationally. So, for example, if you think about these public records request forms, so the idea is, instead of you fill out a PDF form, you email it, and then you get a reply. All right, we have 10 days. We look through our files. All right, here, is this what you want? No, we go back and forth. The idea is that everything's in there, right? So every document will be in there that we would have. And that's going to take a few more months to screen through them. And then you search what you want. And you'll either get here it is, and you can see it, or you'll get a link and you click on it and it will be filled out exactly what you want. So that's kind of the idea. And the reason it might not be immediately available is maybe one of your competing firms doesn't. I mean, we have to share the information if we have it, but we also, there's at least this pause and there's a record of your request. So it's kind of cool. And there's other Massachusetts agencies which want to copy this to some level. And this is one feature that's gotten a lot nationally. So this will be, there may be bugs in it, but we're getting there so that when you're filling out, you're not putting a broad request for information. It's a specific, we know what you want. This is how the information gets uploaded, and this is what you might see when you search again, if you click on it, you can either download it or you'll get that form, and then you'll have it in a day when we authorize. Sometimes it might be, I guess in some cases, there might be litigation or reasons we withhold it, or more likely it might be that our board hasn't taken action. So we wouldn't, until the DSB has opened up an application or opened up a document at a public meeting. The policy has been for a long time is to not provide copies of that. This is Elise. If you're ready, Elise, this is, so Elise looks from a different perspective from a board member. So go ahead, Elise.
Okay, thanks. So Bill, will you continue to run the slides if I
sure.
ask you? Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. The Designer Selection Board greatly appreciates your enthusiasm in adopting Autocen. It's the sustainable thing to do. It has eliminated so much paper, and that is really forward progress from my perspective. And we do look forward to your input. So many, the design firms that are using Autocen fundamentally are becoming the experts in Autocen, not the Designer Selection Board. So we really appreciate your point of view about that. So we're going to just briefly look at, review the application steps and the forms. And I plan to mention some I won't call them recurring mistakes, but I plan to mention some suggestions that the Designer Selection Board has for the information that you provide in the applications. So first of all, this screen shows the most recent projects, and the ones that are available for application are highlighted in green. So this is the portal essentially that would bring information. The designers now obviously apply online for the public notice. And initially it is the DCAM agencies and the charter school projects that are set up for the online applications. The DHCD projects are going to be available soon, maybe tomorrow, very soon. But our goal is for all public projects to be able to be seen and accessed through this portal. Thank you. Next slide. So this is the project summary, and this summary is designed to show enough information at a beginning review for a designer to be able to decide whether or not they are interested in reviewing the full project listing. Next slide. In order to streamline the application process, this is the slide that would allow you to build your project team. And from this project team, it is auto-filled with the required disciplines that the agency has advertised. So it's auto-populated in that regard. So the prime firm would build their team on this screen. They may add additional categories of consultants. Then the subconsultants will automatically receive an email to request confirmation of whether they will join the team. And the prime firm has the ability to notify the subconsultants through this automatic process of the dates that they would want their to receive their materials. So this essentially short circuits the old requirement that a subconsultant needed to formally accept participation in the team. So we'll move on to the application view. So information is pulled directly to this form from the prime firm's disclosure statement and the team organization that we looked at the previous slide, and the public notice. So again, this system is designed to eliminate errors, errors of omission, unintentional errors, that sort of thing, by auto-populating this material. And on the next slide, we will see the design team application. So this is the auto-populated view of the first of the 5 sections in the application. It's been simplified. The entire application has been simplified to include fewer sections and to eliminate the request for SDO certification letters and the subconsultant acknowledgement form that I mentioned a moment ago. So now let's look. So this is the standard layout form. We're showing on the left the resume layout, and on the right the experience layout. These are sections 3 and 4 of the application. They're required elements. Essentially, the prime firm has full design authorship over the information that appears in the box. We wanted to give firms the maximum ability to really showcase their graphic intentions, as well as the written and photographic material. You have the ability to choose whether you're going to present one resume per page or 3 resumes per page, similarly for experience. And if you have questions or would like to have the ability to see examples of successful applications, I would encourage you to contact Claire Hester and the Designer Selection Board staff. It may be that one day there will be the ability to click on a request to see a successful application as an example, but that we don't have that capability today. But successful applications are available through Claire. So now I'd like to move on to think together about sort of the key sections of the application. So there's a cover sheet that has the information. There's been some question about the entries for office. Firms that have local offices and headquarter offices, the Designer Selection Board prefers to see the headquarter office listed and the local office listed, where the work will be, that will be responsible for the work. But not every firm wants to do that. So, especially if a firm's headquarter is out of state, often they are interested in listing just the local office. But anyway, that works for us as well. The team lead has been misunderstood, so perhaps we need a little better semantics on this. The team lead name was intended to be the person who would be responsible for the application, the person that the designer selection board staff could contact if there were questions, as opposed to the registered professional who would sign the contract. So the disclosure statement gives all of that statutory requirements to the designer selection board. So if it's helpful to your team to list the team lead as the marketing professional or the individual in your firm who would be responsible to run down a question, they can be listed there. And as we said before, the subconsultant acknowledgement would come automatically, provides evidence that they agree to participate. It's very important to the designer selection board to see the references and the evaluations that Bill mentioned earlier. 5 is an excellent number. 25 is too many. So it's very helpful if the firms just post the references and evaluations that are most pertinent to the application that they're making. Next slide, please. Question 3 is the resumes, and section 4 is the experience. Again, 1 or 3 versions of resumes on those layout pages, either is fine. This application is meant to be standardized from the standpoint that it is presented sequentially, but not standardized from the standpoint of the information that's in the boxed area on the form can be fine-tuned to the firm's discretion for both of these sections. I would encourage you to show experience, show relevant projects that really relate to the application at hand. It's quite one of the challenges for the designer selection board is when an application is not well integrated. For example, when the prime firm shows their resumes, their experience, and their section 5, additional information, and then sequences it to the subconsultant firm next, first the structural, then the mechanical, then the electrical. So that is less desirable to the designer selection board than to have an integrated proposal where all of the resumes are clustered together, then all of the experience, and then section 5 integrated so that both the agency and the DSB can understand how this team intends to perform the work that, that they're seeking. Next slide, please. So question 5, supplemental response. This is a firm's golden opportunity to be specific about what differentiates them, why they should be selected for the project. It is very important that the evaluation factors that appear in the application, the agency application, are addressed in section 5. It is critically important that you include a diversity statement, your approach to diversity, as well as your conceptual, philosophic approach to diversity as a firm, as a design firm, as well as your specific approach to diversifying the team that you are putting forward. We would encourage you not to include boilerplate information about your firm. Please don't give us any beautiful, basic marketing pieces. There are so many well-qualified firms that are applying to virtually every agency application. It is critically important that you differentiate your firm. With that being said, I would also say that the Designer Selection Board is committed to identifying firms that will provide design excellence to the Commonwealth, committed to diversifying the number of firms that are doing work in the Commonwealth. And so if you are a young firm, a new firm, or a firm that has had much private experience, but not so much public experience, not so much Chapter 149, DCAM experience, tell us why we should give you the opportunity to begin to be considered for this work. And the Designer Selection Board is quite alert to the fact that if you can't have experience with DCAM projects, if you can never be selected to do work for a DCAM. So we're very interested in giving you the opportunity to do that, but rely on you to tell us what's unique about your skills that would be very valuable. Next slide. So lastly, this is an image of the application report. The Designer Selection Board receives agency comments with every application. The agencies give the board their comments about the application. So the statute really considers the agency as a 12th non-voting member of the Designer Selection Board. After the board takes action, you may request a copy of the agency comments that were sent on your application. Generally, these comments tell the board the agency's opinion about your application, whether or not the evaluation criteria were addressed, whether or not you included the diversity statement, whether or not they have experience working with your firm or with members or with member firms, subconsultants, or individuals that may be on one firm's team. The agency may have had experience with that individual when they were working for a previous firm. So all of that information is included in this review from the agency. The Designer Selection Board considers this as good information to go along with the review that the board is making as well. So we're very excited to have this Autocen portal. We're very excited to have so many firms participating with us on this. The board has been interested in having the voting that we do be included in this portal as well, but that's not going to happen because our meetings are open meetings and it's important that the vote be recorded publicly. And so for the time being, we will continue to vote verbally at the meetings, and the Designer Selection Board staff will record those votes manually. So now I'd like to introduce Simone, but first, are there any questions?
There were a few. I had a question come in about whether there was a 2 per page resume format.
You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I just don't know why that wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. Bill, do you know, can we?
We dabbled with different versions, 2 and 3 up per page. So I don't know. I know there are versions of them. It's just a matter of somebody doing it in InDesign and then trying to come up with a Word version for people that don't have InDesign. So there is a 2 or 3 version
so
of them.
A firm that was using InDesign could fundamentally format the information in the box for two resumes or 2 projects and experience, and then insert it into the box. I believe that's possible. I haven't test driven that myself, so I don't have personal experience with that, but I would think that that would be fine. It certainly would be acceptable to the Designer Selection Board.
Okay. There was another question about about what the process is like for those who are writing references. The question was whether you could explain the process or what the process is like for those who are writing references so that we can guide them through that process and help simplify it for them. Is that information that exists someplace?
I can go back to
so
the references.
There's a reference form.
Go ahead.
There's a reference form, but from the earlier questions, it sounded to me as if the glitch might be in the agency's understanding how best to upload this information.
Yeah, I can just comment. So the evaluation is controlled by the statute. There's a process. DCAM and DSB are supposed to create a form according to the statute, which we did. DCAM was a great help looking nationally about how other agencies nationally do it. So they came up with a new form that the DSB approved. And then the way the process works is you have 30 days to weigh in your comments, and those comments have to be part of your public record. So we copied the statute in creating of the evaluations. And you're notified, and it's all done automatically. And then when we came up with the idea of references, we replicated that. We came up with roughly the same categories, a shorter form, voluntary, same thing. You get notified of comments that, hey, somebody left you a reference. The big difference is one's statutory, one's voluntary. If there's a dispute under evaluation, we'll block it, but then it's up to the board to get involved. We'll block it temporarily, but and whereas if it's a reference, if you just tell us, look, I didn't authorize that reference, it's kind of unofficial. It's for your use. But again, it's meant to be basically a short form version of the reference. But again, we just kind of made this up to seem reasonable and to follow that. If you've got suggestions, we can hear it. If you refer to that memo, we've made the references in particular very easy. People can leave them within the system if you're a user. There's a link if you're not a user to be able to leave a reference. So there's even an option. We have it in a Word version. If you have somebody that doesn't even want to do that, we can just have them fill out that Word version, and I'll have our staff do it. So whatever it takes to build up your profile is what we want to see.
So Simone, thank you for being with us.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me. Bill, is it okay if I share my screen? It'll just be easier for me to manipulate. Thanks. Okay, so as Kate said, I'm the Director of the Architects and Engineers in Sustainability at the Department of Housing and Community Development. So in this format, I am more the agency that would be using the portal as opposed to the DSC. So just to kind of tell you what our group does, I think a lot of you already know, but I will just kind of run through that. Our team of architects and engineers oversee the capital projects at 233 state bond-funded local housing authorities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The housing authorities are quasi-state agencies, so they are all owned by the individual towns that have those. So we don't own those, we just regulate, oversee the projects at those. So unlike DCAM, we have a very targeted focus, although we do try to take advantage of all the DCAM knowledge base that is out there. They're doing pretty great, I think. We review the capital plans that the housing authorities submit to us once a year. We then scope the projects for modernization and occasionally new construction. And then we hire the design consultants, review the designs, and we also do the procurement, and we set up the design guidelines and the construction standards that go with all of those projects. So I already said that. We hire designers for about 1,800 projects a year in our pipeline. We do projects for over 50,000 in construction, which DHCD manages, and for those under that, the housing authorities manage. For all of these, we hire a design consultant through a pre-qualified house doctor program or through a request for services, which would go through our DSC. The LHA projects that are over 800,000 in construction costs are the projects which the designer is selected through the DSC, our designer selection committee, is an offshoot of the designer selection board. So when Bill introduced us to the Autocen program, it seemed to make perfect sense that we would run our RFSs through there. We're excited to be doing that. Our applications will be submitted through the program, just like the DSB projects are. They'll be reviewed by our staff and by the local housing authorities. And then they'll be reviewed by our DSC committee. And we'll also be doing specific reporting. I'm not sure how much reporting Bill's group is doing right now. We're gonna introduce them to our reports in case they're interested. So we're trying to work together back and forth and look at what things we're doing, what things they're doing, and trying to make the system a little bit better. And ultimately, the process will archive all of our RFSs as well. So we're excited about that. We are having a discussion in our office about all the paper we need to archive and what we're going to do with it. So luckily, our RFSs will be in this archive system. And I'm excited that this coordinated effort will make it easier for consultants to have one hub for applying to projects, and that the data captured in Autocen will allow us to do significant metrics around who applies, outreach for diverse designer involvement, and just in general align the DSC process with the DSB process. Basically, since they're both under MGL Chapter 7, that seems really appropriate. In the past, we were aligned, but we both had our own little bit of a process that we did, and so I think this will help make it seem like a more regular who's doing what. You won't have the complication of DHCD does it this way and the DSB does it this way, and so I think that'll make it a lot easier for everyone to apply. So I think that's about it for me. Do you want me to stop sharing, Bill, so you can share again?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Simone. I know all of you know that in the design process, the creative side and the ideas is the hardest part, right? And then once you figure out what you're trying to do, you process it, design it. But so Simone's ideas, as you can see, I mean, just the input that she's given, even early onto this, some of the features already built in Autocen, and what I think is really exciting for me as every new agency joins in, we all benefit. So, you know, we've already had tremendous amount of ideas from Simone and Elisa's involvement, but you know, if we can get more and more agencies to take part, we're going to have the benefit. You know, most of the changes will be related to their unique processes, but you know, we fully expect there to be new features that you know, that we can all benefit from. So I just want to let's see, I can get down here. Sorry. We've provided this, by the way, for in a PDF form, so so Kate has it. So our contacts are in here. Feel free to reach out. I'm hoping that you know, if you're interested, you can join in any of the other events we have. The Autocen subcommittee meeting on the 7th is really a place to formally discuss some changes. I mean, you certainly can send me some ideas. Would love to get them. But but that's the way we are at a public meeting, the subcommittee, which is made up primarily of board members. And it's much less formal than our normal public meetings. It's a smaller group, and I think a lot gets done in an hour. We've got that big design partnership meeting, kind of the matchmaking session that we're planning on doing in September. That's part of that is we've got to get more MBE and WBE firms, but on the other hand, we develop new partnerships. So we continue to work on different ways to make that work smoothly. And again, as many of you have taken advantage of, if you want like a one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three small group session with me and my staff, we're happy to do that. I just want to say this. So I used to have a really nice office. I still do. And I would go in at 5 in the morning and it was beautiful. And then I would leave at, and always rushing around traffic. What Autocen does is it lets us, as much as I had a nice view of my office, I don't have to do that anymore. The idea is everything we do can all be done into the system. So we're hoping you continue to help us make it better and also help us recruit other agencies to become full partners in this with us. So that's all I had, Kate.
Thank you. I'm sure that people have had questions that they might not have put it into the chat. I saw one come up from Susan. Susan asked whether there's a timeline for cities and towns in Massachusetts to start using Autocen.
So DHCD, DCAM, charter schools, they're 100%. It's going to take a while for DHC to get all of their thing customized the way I want. But as it is right now, they'll be full partners, right? This is not a DSB system. This is really just managed by us, like we provided forms in the past and like we provide guidelines according to the statute. So those are the full partners, and we hope they're more full partners. That being said, every city and town, every state agency already is required by statute to provide us with evaluations. And again, we've never had it. It's been us. So we've never had a great system for that. So from that standpoint, they're already required to do this, and it's more about informing them of this new system. And I think when I do talk to them, they're all willing to help because they see the benefit of having this all in one place as the statute. So from that standpoint, they're already partners. They're just not full partners, meaning that their projects are listed. They use a standard application. And I think there's huge potential for that. The April 1st session I have with Mass Facilities, hopefully will catch up a lot of them up to speed. And that coupled with this new tool that we hope to have fully ready to go by the April 7th Autocen subcommittee, you'll be able to upload any evaluations so we're hoping that'll really jumpstart getting these into the system.
Great. Other questions that anybody might have? I see Will threw a comment, and he said it'll be great for the environment for cities and towns to go digital. Every responding firm printing and sending up to 11 or more proposal booklets uses a lot of paper. Good point.
And just on that point, sorry. Just
go ahead, Simone, go ahead.
We've already started accepting PDFs as a format, even without the Autocen Autocen portal. So towns and cities could do that as well. There's no reason they have to be stuck in paper at this point in time.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've similarly for quite some time have been having we went to move to electronic submissions. The city and towns are required to use our forms, so they can either use the old 16 section form that we had, or they can go into Autocen. It's going to, as we get, one of the problems with cities and towns, they don't do a lot of these, right? So a typical town, we raise the threshold for designer selection. So now it's basically $30,000. So any project that's under design fee under 30,000, they can just hire you, which I don't know if everyone understands. But if it requires designer selection, the typical town may only do a handful of those in a year. And so, you know, it's not something they're doing every day, whereas maybe Boston and Cambridge and a few others are. But so it's not a huge priority for them, but they are required to do these evaluations, and we hope that they'll at least join in with that very soon.
Thank you. Anybody else have other questions? I know you want me to provide my email address. I'm going to put it in the chat, but also know that it's on the BSA Marketing and PR Network website. So if you don't capture it from the chat now, you can go on the website and see it there. And I'd be happy to provide the PDF of the presentation, which Bill has already kindly sent to me, to anybody who requests it. Are there other questions for our panel? You guys were too thorough. We've got nothing left.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having us, and hopefully we get a lot of good suggestions and questions that we can help with.
Thank you very, very much. I know that I found it helpful, and I'm again, we'll remind folks that the recording will be up on the BSA Marketing and PR Network website. So if your colleagues or peers were unable to attend today, they can find the recording there in a few days, at the latest next week. And again, feel free to email me directly or for a copy of the PDF. Thank you to you, Simone, Elise, and Bill, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, everybody. Have a good morning.